The morning sun cast long shadows across Kensington Palace, as Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, stood by the window of their private quarters. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the letter she had just finished reading for the third time. The official seal of Buckingham Palace seemed to mock her from the expensive paper, and she could feel tears threatening to spill from her eyes. William entered the room quietly, his footsteps muffled by the thick Persian carpet. He had just returned from an early morning meeting with palace advisors, and the tension in his shoulders was visible even through his perfectly tailored suit. The weight of royal duty had been pressing down on both of them for months, but today felt different. Today felt like everything was about to change. "The children are asking questions again," Catherine said softly, not turning from the window. Her voice carried the exhaustion of a mother trying to protect her family while navigating the impossible waters of royal protocol. George asked me yesterday why the photographers keep following us to school." Charlotte wanted to know why she can't have play dates like other children without security arrangements. William moved closer, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. Through the window, they could see the perfectly manicured gardens that had been their sanctuary for years. The same gardens where their children had taken their first steps, learned to ride bicycles, and played countless games of hide and seek. Now, even this private space felt invaded by the constant scrutiny of their public life. The letter in Catherine's hands contained news that would shake the very foundation of their carefully constructed world. Palace sources had been leaking private family moments to tabloids for months, but they had never been able to identify the source. The investigation had been thorough, involving trusted security personnel and even private investigators, but every lead had gone cold. "We've given them everything," William said, his voice heavy with frustration. "Every public appearance, every charity event, every carefully planned photo opportunity, but it's never enough. They want our private moments, our children's innocence, our real emotions." His jaw tightened as he spoke, the same way it did when he was trying to control his anger in public. Catherine finally turned to face her husband. He could see the pain in her eyes that she had been hiding from the world. The same eyes that had captivated him during their university days at St. Andrews, now filled with a weariness that seemed far beyond her years. The constant pressure of being perfect, of never showing weakness, of always being on, had taken its toll on both of them. "Do you remember when we were just William and Kate?" she asked, a sad smile playing at the corners of her mouth. When your biggest worry was passing your geography exam, and mine was whether my essay on art history would be good enough. Those days seemed like a lifetime ago, before the weight of the crown, before the endless protocols, before every decision had to be measured against its potential impact on the monarchy." William nodded, remembering those simpler times when they could walk hand in hand through the Scottish countryside without a security detail, when they could laugh freely without worrying about photographers capturing unflattering angles, when their love was just theirs and not a matter of public fascination and scrutiny. The palace had become both their home and their prison. Every room held memories of happier times, but also reminders of the responsibilities that never ceased. The nursery where they had rocked their babies to sleep was the same space where they now had to explain to their children why their lives were different from other families. "The worst part," Catherine continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "is that we can't even trust the people closest to us. Someone in our inner circle has been sharing our most private moments with strangers. Someone who sees our children at their most vulnerable, who knows our routines, our fears, our hopes." The betrayal cut deeper than any negative headline or unflattering photograph ever could. William pulled his wife closer, feeling her body shake with suppressed sobs. They had both learned early in their marriage that crying in public was not an option, that showing emotional weakness could be interpreted as an ability to handle royal duties. But here, in their private quarters, away from cameras and protocol officers, they could finally acknowledge the pain they had been carrying. "We'll figure this out," William promised, though his own voice wavered with uncertainty. "We'll find out who's been doing this, and we'll protect our family, whatever it takes." But even as he spoke the words, he wondered if they were promises he could actually keep. The machinery of the royal establishment was vast and complex. loyalties and motivations that weren't always clear. The phone on William's desk began to ring, its shrill tone cutting through the emotional moment like a knife. They both knew it could be another crisis, another scandal to manage, another carefully worded statement to approve. The outside world never stopped demanding their attention. It's never allowed them the luxury of private grief or personal time. Catherine straightened her shoulders and wiped away the tears that had finally begun to fall. This was the transformation William had watched countless times over the years, his wife. The woman he fell in love with, disappearing behind the mask of the Duchess, the public figure who never faltered, never showed weakness, never let the world see her cry. "We should answer that," she said, her voice steady once again. But William could see in her eyes that something had shifted. The letter in her hands contained information that would change everything, and they both knew that their lives were about to take a turn they had never anticipated. As William reached for the phone, he caught a glimpse of their wedding photograph on the mantelpiece, two young people, radiant with love and hope, believing they could navigate any challenge together. Now, years later, they were about to discover just how much that love would be tested, and whether their marriage could survive the truth that was waiting behind a door they were about to open. Morrison's hands trembled slightly as he turned to the final page of the investigation report. The black and white photograph clipped to the document showed someone William and Catherine had trusted with their most precious possessions, their children's well-being, and their family's privacy. The image was time-stamped and showed the person in question using a mobile phone to photograph documents on William's private desk. "Maria Santos," Morrison said quietly, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Your children's nanny for the past 3 years?" Catherine felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Maria, who had sung Spanish lullabies to Charlotte when she couldn't sleep, who had patiently taught George to tie his shoes, who had been there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every precious family moment. Maria, who had dried their tears when the pressures of royal life became overwhelming, who had been like a second mother to their children. "That's impossible," Catherine whispered, shaking her head in denial. "Maria loves our children. She's been with us through everything. She knows how much we trust her, how much the children adore her." But even as she spoke, fragments of memory began surfacing, times when Maria had been unusually interested in their schedules. Moments when she had asked seemingly innocent questions about their private conversations. William stared at the photograph, his mind racing through countless interactions with Maria. She had been recommended by palace staff, passed extensive background checks, and had seamlessly integrated into their family life. The children ran to her with the same enthusiasm they showed their parents, and she had been present for some of their most intimate family moments. "The evidence is comprehensive," Morrison continued, spreading additional documents across the table. Phone records show regular contact with known tabloid informants. Bank statements reveal deposits that coincide perfectly with major story leaks about your family. We also found photographic equipment hidden in her personal quarters, along with detailed notes about your family's routines and private conversations. Catherine picked up one of the notes, written in Maria's familiar handwriting. It contained details about George's difficulty with mathematics homework, Charlotte's fear of thunderstorms, and even intimate conversations between William and Catherine about their concerns for their children's adjustment to royal life. Every private worry, every parental moment of uncertainty had been documented and sold to the highest bidder. "She knew everything about us," William said, his voice hollow with realization. "Every family tradition, every private joke, every moment of vulnerability. She was there when Charlotte had nightmares, when George struggled with the pressure of being future king, when we had difficult conversations about royal duty and normal childhood. The betrayal felt deeper than any public scandal or media intrusion they had ever experienced." Morrison nodded gravely. "The sophistication of the operation suggests she wasn't working alone. The network of contacts, the careful laundering of payments, the strategic timing of information releases. This was a coordinated effort that likely involved multiple people within and outside the palace system." He pulled out another document showing a web of connections between Maria and various media contacts, financial intermediaries, and even other palace staff members. Catherine felt physically ill as she realized the extent of the violation. "Our children told her things they didn't tell us," she said, her voice breaking. She was the one they confided in when they felt overwhelmed by royal protocols, when they missed their grandparents, when they just wanted to be normal children. She used their innocence, their trust, their most vulnerable moments for profit. Room fell silent as the full magnitude of the betrayal settled over them. This wasn't just about privacy violations or media intrusions. This was about someone they had welcomed into their family, someone they had trusted with their children's emotional well-being, systematically exploiting that trust for financial gain. William stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where Maria had spent countless hours playing with George and Charlotte. Every memory now felt tainted, every moment of trust revealed as potential deception. "How do we tell the children?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Do we explain that someone they love, someone they trusted completely, has been betraying our family?" Morrison cleared his throat carefully. "There are additional complications, Your Royal Highness. Our investigation suggests that Maria may have been recruited specifically for this purpose. Her placement in your household, her background credentials, even her relationship with the children, all of it may have been calculated from the beginning." He showed them earlier documents revealing discrepancies in Maria's initial background. Check and employment history. Catherine felt tears streaming down her face as she processed this information. "You mean she never cared about our children at all? Everything she did, every kindness she showed them, every moment of apparent love and concern, it was all fake." The thought that George and Charlotte's trust and affection had been manipulated made her feel sick with rage and grief. "We can't be certain of her motivations," Morrison replied diplomatically. "But the evidence suggests a pattern of calculated behavior designed to gain maximum access to your family's private information. The emotional manipulation of your children appears to have been part of the strategy to ensure her continued employment and access to sensitive information." William turned back from the window, his face set with a determination Catherine recognized. It was the same expression he wore when dealing with the most challenging aspects of royal duty, when personal feelings had to be set aside for the greater good. "What are our options?" he asked Morrison. "We can proceed with criminal charges for breach of confidentiality and potentially espionage, given the security implications," Morrison explained. "However, a public trial would inevitably expose many of the private details she documented, potentially causing more harm to your family. Alternatively, we can handle this internally, terminate her employment immediately, and ensure she signs comprehensive non-disclosure agreements to prevent further damage." Catherine wiped away her tears and looked at her husband. They both knew that whatever decision they made would have lasting consequences for their children, would have to cope with losing someone they loved and learning that their trust had been betrayed. The innocence that royal life had already begun to erode would suffer another devastating blow. "We need time to think," William said finally. "And we need to figure out how to protect our children through this. They're going to be heartbroken, confused, and scared. Maria wasn't just their nanny, she was family to them." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, revealing the depth of his own pain at the betrayal. Morrison gathered his documents and prepared to leave, but paused at the door. "There's one more thing you should know," he said reluctantly. "Maria left the palace this morning for what she claimed was a family emergency in Spain. Our sources suggest she may have been tipped off about the investigation. If we're going to take action, we need to move quickly." As the door closed behind Morrison, Willie and Catherine were left alone with the devastating knowledge that their family's sanctuary had been violated by someone they had trusted completely. The woman who had been present for their children's most vulnerable moments, who had shared in their joys and comforted their fears, had been systematically betraying them for money. The weight of having to tell George and Charlotte that someone they loved had been lying to them felt almost unbearable. The phone call had been brief but devastating. Sir Robert Morrison, the palace's head of security, requested an immediate private meeting. His usually calm voice carried an urgency that made William's stomach clench with dread. Within the hour, Morrison arrived at their quarters, carrying a thick manila folder that seemed to weigh down his usually confident stride. "Your Royal Highnesses," Morrison began, his weathered face showing the strain of years protecting the royal family. "What I'm about to share with you will be difficult to hear, but you need to know the truth before we proceed with any further." Action. He placed the folder on the coffee table between them, his hands lingering on it as if reluctant to let go of secrets that had been buried for months. Catherine felt William's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining with the same automatic comfort they had shared for over a decade of marriage. Whatever was in that folder, they would face it together, just as they had faced every other challenge their unique life had thrown at them. Morrison opened the folder slowly, revealing photographs, phone records, and what appeared to be bank statements. The images were grainy surveillance photos taken with long-range lenses, showing intimate family moments that had never been meant for public consumption. Catherine gasped as she recognized pictures of herself helping Charlotte with homework, of William teaching George to play cricket in their private garden, of their family sharing quiet moments that had somehow found their way into tabloid newspapers. Weeks later, "We've been conducting a comprehensive investigation for the past 6 months," Morrison explained, his voice heavy with the weight of what he had discovered. "The leak wasn't random, and it wasn't opportunistic. Someone with intimate access to your daily routines, your private conversations, and your family schedules has been systematically documenting and selling information about your lives." William's jaw tightened as he studied the photographs. Each image represented a violation of their family's privacy, a moment stolen and commodified for public consumption. "How long has this been going on?" he asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. "Our investigation suggests, at least, 18 months, possibly longer," Morrison replied. "The pattern is sophisticated and calculated. Personal information was being passed along through a network of contacts, making it nearly impossible to trace back to the original source. Bank records show regular payments of substantial amounts to an account that was very carefully hidden." Catherine picked up one of the photographs with shaking hands. It showed her consoling George after he had scraped his knee during a family bike ride in the palace grounds. The image had appeared in a tabloid 3 days later with the headline overprotective, "Kate coddles future king." At the time, they had assumed it was taken by a photographer with a telephoto lens from outside the palace walls. But now she realized someone much closer had captured this private moment. "At the children," Catherine whispered, her voice breaking. "Slightly. They've been watching our children, documenting their private moments, their struggles, their innocent childhood experiences." The thought that someone they trusted had been turning their family life into entertainment made her feel physically sick. Morrison nodded grimly. The information being sold wasn't just photographs, private conversations, medical appointments, school events, even details about the children's personalities and preferences that could only come from someone who spends significant time with your family. He pulled out another document, this one showing a timeline of leaked information perfectly correlated with family events and private moments. William stood up abruptly, his composure finally cracking. "Someone in our inner circle, someone we trust with our children's safety and our family's well-being, has been betraying us for money." His voice carried a fury that Catherine had rarely heard, even during their most difficult moments in the public eye. "The security implications are staggering," Morrison continued. "Detailed schedules, location information, security protocols. All of this information in the wrong hands could have put your family at serious risk. We're not just talking about privacy violations anymore. We're talking about potential security breaches that could have endangered your children's lives." Catherine felt tears welling up again, but this time they were tears of anger rather than sadness. The violation felt personal and profound. Someone they had welcomed into their home, someone they had trusted with their most precious possessions, their children, had been systematically betraying that trust for financial gain. "Do we know who it is?" William asked, his voice dangerously. "Quiet." Morrison hesitated, glancing between the couple before reaching for another document in the folder. "We have strong evidence, but we wanted to present our findings to you before taking any action. The investigation has been meticulous, but the accusations are serious, and the implications for your household staff and the broader palace operations are significant." Morrison's reluctance to reveal the name was palpable, suggesting that the betrayal came from someone particularly close to the family. The room fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock that had been a wedding gift from the Queen. Each second felt weighted with the magnitude of what they were learning. Their private sanctuary, the place where they thought they could be themselves without performance or pretense, had been compromised by someone they had trusted implicitly. Catherine thought about all the people who had access to their private lives. Nannies who helped care for their children, housekeeping staff who cleaned their most intimate spaces, security personnel who knew their every movement, personal assistants who managed their schedules and knew their preferences. Any one of these people could have been the source of the betrayal. And the thought made her question every interaction, every conversation, every moment of vulnerability they had shared in what they believed was the safety of their own home. "We need to know," Catherine said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "Whatever the consequences, we need to know who has been doing this to our family." William nodded in agreement, squeezing her hand tighter as they prepared to learn the identity of their betra. Morrison took a deep breath and opened to the final page of his report. "The evidence points conclusively to someone who has been with your household for over 3 years, someone who has had unlimited access to your private quarters, your children's routines, and your most confidential family moments." He paused, meeting their eyes with a look of profound regret. "Someone you both trusted completely." The silence that followed felt endless, filled with the weight of betrayal and the sickening realization that their sanctuary had been violated. By someone they had considered family, William and Catherine sat frozen, holding hands and holding their breath, waiting to learn the identity of the person who had sold their privacy, their children's innocence, and their family's trust for money. The hours following Morrison's revelation felt like the longest of their marriage. William and Catherine sat in their private study, surrounded by the debris of their shattered trust, trying to process the magnitude of Maria's betrayal, while simultaneously planning how to protect their children from the devastating truth. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken fears and the weight of decisions that would affect their family forever. Catherine's phone buzzed with a text message, and her heart nearly stopped when she saw Maria's name on the screen. "I'm so sorry I had to leave suddenly," the message read. "It's family emergency in Madrid. I'll call the children tonight to explain." The casual normalcy of the message, sent by someone who had spent years systematically betraying their trust, made Catherine feel nauseated. "She's still pretending," Catherine said, showing William the message. "Even now, knowing we might discover her betrayal, she's still maintaining the facade of caring about our children." The thought that Maria could continue the deception even while fleeing the country demonstrated a level of calculated coldness that Catherine found almost incomprehensible. William took the phone and stared at the message, his jaw clenching as he processed the implications. "She's buying time," he said grimly. "If she calls the children tonight, she could potentially manipulate them. Try to control the narrative before we have a chance to explain what really happened." The protective father in him rebelled against the idea of Maria having any further contact with George and Charlotte. They were interrupted by the sound of children's laughter echoing from the garden outside. Through the window, they could see George and Charlotte playing on the swing set that Maria had helped install just 6 months earlier. I'd spent countless hours pushing them on those swings, teaching Charlotte to pump her legs independently, helping George overcome his initial fear of heights. Now, every memory of those happy times felt poisoned by the knowledge of her deception. "Mummy, where's Maria?" Charlotte's voice called from the garden, and Catherine felt her heart break all over again. The children had been asking about their beloved nanny since breakfast. Confused by her sudden absence and worried about the family emergency they had been told about. Their innocent concern for someone who had betrayed them was almost too painful to bear. Catherine walked to the window and forced a smile she didn't feel. "She's still helping her family, sweetheart," she called back, buying them more time to figure out how to handle the situation. "Daddy and I will be out to play with you in a few minutes." The lie felt bitter on her tongue, but she knew they needed more time to prepare. Before having the most difficult conversation of their children's young lives, William joined her at the window. Watching their children play with the carefree abandon, that would soon be shattered by harsh adult realities. "We have to tell them something," he said quietly. "They're going to keep asking, and they have a right to know why someone they love suddenly disappeared from their lives without explanation. But how do we explain that the person they trusted most outside of us has been lying to them for years?" Catherine asked, her voice heavy with the weight of impending conversations. "How do we make them understand without destroying their ability to trust anyone ever again?" The balance between protecting their children's innocence and preparing them for the harsh realities of their public lives had always been delicate. But this situation pushed that balance to its breaking point. A knock at the door interrupted their thoughts, and Morrison entered with a grim expression that suggested more bad news. "Your Royal Highnesses, we've had developments," he said, holding a tablet that displayed what appeared to be a breaking news headline. "Maria Santos has given an exclusive interview to a major tabloid. It's being published tomorrow morning." Catherine's blood ran cold as she read the headline. "Royal Nanny Tells All: The Secret Life Inside Kensington Palace." The subheading promised explosive revelations about Will and Kate's marriage troubles and the children's struggles with royal life. Maria hadn't just betrayed them by selling information. Secretly, she was now publicly exploiting their family's most private moments for maximum financial and media impact. "She's claiming the children are struggling emotionally," Morrison continued, scrolling through the article preview. "She's describing private family moments, quoting conversations she overheard between you and the children, and painting a picture of a family in crisis. The tabloid is promoting it as an insider's exclusive look at the real story behind your public image." William felt rage building in his chest as he processed the implications. "She's using our children's private struggles as entertainment," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Every moment of vulnerability, every time they needed comfort or guidance, every normal childhood difficulty, she's turned it all into tabloid fodder." Catherine sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the realization that their worst fears were coming true. "The children will see this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Their classmates, their teachers, everyone they interact with will read these private details about their lives. They'll know things about George and Charlotte that the children might not even want us to know." Morrison continued reading from the article preview. "She's claiming to be motivated by concern for the children's well-being, suggesting that the pressure of royal life is damaging their emotional development. She's positioning herself as someone who tried to protect them from the harmful effects of their privileged but restrictive lifestyle. The hypocrisy of someone who had systematically exploited the children, now claiming to be their advocate, was breathtaking in its audacity. "We need to get ahead of this," William said, his royal training taking over even as his heart was breaking. "The palace press office needs to prepare a response. We need to consider legal action, and we need to protect the children from the fallout." But even as he spoke, he knew that the damage was already done. Maria's betrayal would become public knowledge. Their family's private struggles would become entertainment for millions of readers. Catherine looked out the window again at their children, still playing innocently in the garden, unaware that their world was about to be turned upside down by someone they loved and trusted. "They'll have to go to school tomorrow," she said, reality setting in. "They'll have to face their classmates knowing that intimate details about their family life are being discussed by everyone around them. And they still don't know the truth about Maria," William added, the weight of their upcoming conversation with the children pressing down on both of them. "They're going to read in the newspapers that someone they adored has been sharing their private moments with strangers. And they're going to have to process that betrayal while dealing with the public humiliation." Morrison closed the tablet and looked at the royal couple with genuine sympathy. "I know this is incredibly difficult, but we need to make some decisions quickly. The story breaks in less than 12 hours, and once it's public, our options become much more limited." He paused, then added quietly, "The children deserve to hear this from you before they hear it from anyone else." Catherine stood up, wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Call the children inside," she said to William, her voice steadying with maternal determination. "If we're going to tell them their world is about to change, they should hear it from us first." The conversation would be one of the most difficult of their lives, but it was also an opportunity to show George and Charlotte that, even when trust is betrayed, family remains constant. William nodded, knowing that the next few hours would test their family in ways they had never imagined. As he walked toward the garden to call their children inside, he wondered how they would ever restore the sense of safety and privacy that Maria's betrayal had stolen from all of them. The family drawing room had never felt smaller as William and Catherine sat across from their children, struggling to find words that could explain the unexplainable. George, now 8 years old, and increasingly aware of his unique position in the world, sat with the serious expression he wore when sensing adult tension. Charlotte, 6, and still beautifully innocent, swung her legs from the oversized chair, occasionally glancing toward the door as if expecting Maria to walk through it at any moment. "Is Maria's family okay?" Charlotte asked for the third time, her small voice filled with genuine concern. "Can we send her flowers? She always sends us cards when we're sad." The pure sweetness of her question made Catherine's heart ache with the knowledge of what they were about to destroy. William exchanged a look with Catherine, drawing strength from their shared resolve to handle this together. "We need to talk to you both about Maria," he began carefully, his voice gentle but serious. "What we're going to tell you might be confusing and sad, but we want you to hear it from us first." George straightened in his chair, his young face already showing the gravity that would one day help him bear the weight of the crown. "Is she not coming back?" he asked, demonstrating the perceptiveness that sometimes surprised his parents. "Left very quickly and she forgot to say goodbye properly." Maria never forgets to say goodbye. Catherine felt tears threatening again, as she saw her son already processing the inconsistencies in Maria's departure. "You're right, George. Maria did leave very quickly, and there's a reason for that." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they're supposed to protect. Maria made some choices that weren't kind to our family." Charlotte's expression grew puzzled. "But Maria is always kind," she protested. "She helped me learn to braid my hair, and she makes the best hot chocolate. And she knows all the Spanish songs that help me sleep when I have bad dreams." The confusion in her voice was heartbreaking, reflecting the dissonance between the Maria she knew and loved and the reality her parents were trying to explain. William knelt down in front of his children, bringing himself to their eye level. "You're absolutely right that Maria did kind things for you," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his heart. "She did help you and take care of you, and your feelings about her are real and important. But Maria also did something that wasn't kind or honest." "What did she do?" George asked, his young face serious as he prepared for difficult news. His question carried the weight of someone already learning that the adult world contained complexities and betrayals that children shouldn't have to understand. Catherine took a deep breath. "Maria was sharing private information about our family with people who shouldn't have that information. She was telling strangers about our personal conversations, our private moments, and details about your lives that should have stayed within our family." The clinical explanation felt inadequate for the depth of the betrayal, but she struggled to find appropriate words for such adult deceptions. Charlotte's eyes widened with confusion. "Like when I told her I was scared about the big dinner with Granny? She told someone about that?" The innocent question revealed the intimacy of the relationship Maria had built with the children, making her betrayal even more devastating. "Yes, sweetheart," Catherine replied gently. "She told people about private conversations like that one, and many others. She also took pictures of our family when we thought we were alone, and she shared those pictures with newspapers." Explanation felt like she was destroying something precious in her daughter's worldview. The belief that trusted adults always acted with good intentions. George's face darkened with an anger that seemed far too mature for his 8 years. "She was spying on us," he said, the word heavy with understanding. "Like the bad people in the stories who pretend to be friends but aren't really friends at all." His ability to grasp the situation's complexity was both impressive and heartbreaking. "Exactly right," William confirmed, proud of his son's understanding while grieving for the innocence they were losing. "Maria was pretending to be completely on our side while actually working with people who wanted to know our private business." He paused, then added, "And tomorrow, she's going to tell even more of our private family information to a newspaper." Charlotte began to cry, not fully understanding the situation, but sensing the deep sadness and betrayal that filled the room. "But I love Maria," she said through her tears. "I don't want her to be bad. Can't we help her be good again?" Her innocent hope that love could fix betrayal was perhaps the most heartbreaking response of all. Catherine moved to comfort her daughter, holding her close while struggling with her own tears. "I know you love her, Charlotte, and that love is real and beautiful. Maria did care about you in some ways, but she also made choices that hurt our family. Sometimes people we love do things that aren't right, and we have to protect ourselves even when it makes us sad." George remained quiet for a long moment, processing the information with the solemnity that had always marked his personality. "Will people at school know about this?" he asked finally, already understanding the public implications of their private life being exposed. "Will they read about our family in the newspapers?" William nodded sadly. "Yes, they probably will. Why we wanted to tell you first, so you'd understand what really happened instead of hearing confused versions from other people." He reached out to touch his son's shoulder. "You and Charlotte didn't do anything wrong. This is about adult choices and adult responsibilities." "I'm angry," George said simply, his young voice carrying a weight that no child should have to bear. "I'm angry that she lied to us. And I'm angry that she's going to tell her private things to strangers. And I'm angry that other kids will know things about Charlotte and me that we didn't want them to know." His articulation of the violation was remarkably mature and painfully accurate. Charlotte looked up from her mother's embrace with tear-stained cheeks. "Does this mean we can't trust anybody anymore?" she asked, voicing the fear that William and Catherine had been dreading. "If Maria could lie to us, how do we know who else might be lying?" The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything they wanted their children to believe about the world. Catherine and William looked at each other, knowing that their answer would shape their children's ability to form relationships and trust others for years to come. "We can still trust people," Catherine said carefully. "But this experience teaches us to be more careful about who we share our most private thoughts and feelings with. There are still many people in our lives who truly care about us and would never betray our trust." Even as she spoke, she wondered if she believed her own words. Knowing that Maria's betrayal had shaken her own ability to trust anyone outside their immediate family, William gathered both children close. The morning sun felt different as it streamed through the palace windows. Catherine had barely slept, alternating between checking news websites and standing guard outside her children's bedrooms, as if her physical presence could somehow protect them from the storm that was about to break. At exactly 6 o'clock, her phone began buzzing with notifications from palace press officers, family members, and friends who had seen the early editions of the tabloids. William emerged from his study, where he had spent most of the night coordinating with legal teams, security personnel, and senior palace officials. His usually immaculate appearance showed signs of the sleepless night, but his eyes carried a determination that Catherine recognized from their most challenging moments as a couple and as public figures. "The article is worse than we expected," he said quietly, handing her a tablet displaying the tabloid's website. The headline screamed from the screen in bold letters, accompanied by photographs that Catherine recognized as private family moments that should never have been made public. Maria's interview covered 3 full pages, with quotes that felt like violations of their children's innocence and their marriage's privacy. Catherine scrolled through the article, her heart sinking with each paragraph. Maria had shared details about George's anxiety regarding his future role as king, describing private conversations where the 8-year-old had expressed fear about the weight of royal responsibility. She had revealed Charlotte's struggles with being constantly photographed, including a heartbreaking moment when the 6-year-old had asked why she couldn't have normal birthday parties like other children. Most devastating were Maria's claims about William and Catherine's marriage, suggesting that the pressure of royal life had created tension between them. She quoted private conversations where they had discussed their concerns about raising children in the public eye, conversations that had been moments of vulnerability and mutual support, now twisted into suggestions of marital discord. "She's positioned herself as a concerned whistleblower," Catherine said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "She's claiming she revealed these private details because she was worried about the children's well-being and felt she had to speak out." The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. The woman who had systematically exploited their children's trust was now claiming to be their advocate. A soft knock at the door interrupted their grim review of the article. George appeared in his pajamas, his young face serious and determined. "Mummy, Daddy, I heard your phone's buzzing all night," he said with the perceptiveness that sometimes startled his parents. "Is it about what Maria did?" "Are people talking about our family?" William knelt down to his son's level, struck once again by George's maturity in handling difficult situations. "Yes, the newspaper story came out this morning," he confirmed gently. "Some people will probably talk about it, and you might hear things at school. But remember what we discussed yesterday? You and Charlotte didn't do anything wrong." Charlotte appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of conversation. Her hair tousled from sleep and her favorite stuffed animal clutched tightly in her arms. "Are people going to be mean to us because of what Maria said?" she asked, her 6-year-old voice carrying a wisdom that broke her parents' hearts. Catherine gathered both children close, feeling the familiar protective instinct that had guided her through years of navigating royal motherhood. "Some people might say unkind things," she admitted honestly, "but that's because they don't really know us or understand our family. The people who truly know us will understand that Maria wasn't." Telling the whole truth, the next few hours unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of crisis management. The children were driven to school by a different route, with additional security measures that they accepted with the weary resignation of those already accustomed to living under unusual circumstances. Palace press officers issued carefully worded statements about privacy violations and the protection of minor children. Legal teams began pursuing injunctions to prevent further publication of private family information. But beneath all the professional responses and legal maneuvering, the human cost of Maria's betrayal continued to unfold. Catherine watched her children leave for school knowing they would face questions, stares, and whispered conversations about their private family life. The protective bubble she and William had tried to maintain around George and Charlotte's childhood had been permanently burst by someone they had trusted completely. Throughout the day, messages of support arrived from family members, close friends, and even other royal families who had faced similar betrayals. The Queen called personally to express her outrage and to assure William and Catherine of the family's complete support. These gestures of solidarity provided some comfort, but they couldn't undo the fundamental violation of trust that would forever change how the family approached relationships with staff and caregivers. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, as a family, George surprised them with his resilience. "I told my teacher about what happened," he announced matter-of-factly. "She said some adults make bad choices, but that doesn't mean all adults are bad. I told James and Marcus that if anyone says mean things about our family, they should just ignore them, because those people don't really know us." Charlotte nodded. "Seriously. My friend Emma asked if I was sad about Maria, and I said yes, I am sad. But I'm also angry because she wasn't honest with us. Emma said her babysitter would never do something like that, because she really loves Emma's family." The simple wisdom of 6-year-old logic provided a clarity that adult analysis often missed. Catherine felt a surge of pride in her children's ability to process such a complex betrayal while maintaining their fundamental sense of right and wrong. "You both handled today beautifully," she told them. "I know it wasn't easy, but you showed real courage in facing a difficult situation." As the weeks passed, the immediate crisis of Maria's betrayal gradually faded from the headlines, replaced by other scandals and stories. But the impact on the family's daily life proved more lasting. New security protocols were implemented, background checks for household staff became more rigorous, and the children began to understand that their trust was something to be given more carefully. The healing process was slow and sometimes painful. George occasionally woke from nightmares about people watching him through hidden cameras. Charlotte went through a phase of testing whether her parents would keep their promises, as if verifying that not all trusted adults would eventually betray her confidence. But gradually, the family found its new equilibrium. They learned to create genuine privacy within their carefully managed public lives. They developed ways to protect their most intimate moments while still maintaining the openness and warmth that had always characterized their family relationships. 6 months later, as Catherine watched her children playing in the same garden, where Maria had once pushed them on swings, she realized that the betrayal had ultimately strengthened their family bonds. They had faced their worst fears about trust and privacy, and they had survived with their love for each other intact. The experience had been devastating, but it had also proven that their family's foundation was strong enough to withstand even the most profound betrayals. William joined her at the window, following her gaze to their children's carefree play. "They're okay," he said simply, and Catherine knew he was right. They'd all been wounded by Maria's betrayal, but they had also discovered reserves of strength, resilience, and mutual support that would serve them well in facing whatever challenges their unique life might bring in the future. The door that Maria had opened to their private world could never be completely closed again. But William and Catherine had learned to build new doors, stronger locks, and most importantly, to appreciate the unbreakable bonds of genuine family love that no betrayal could ever truly destroy.